On today's episode of the JB Podcast, I'm going over everything today because that's what I owe you guys after taking some time. We're going to talk football, baseball in the New York sports area, basketball news a little bit, and we're going to do a movie catch-up. It's all coming up next on the JB Podcast. The New York baseball teams. All right, let's get this over with. Let's start with the Yankees. The Yankees stink. My God. This, and honestly, there's nothing close to it. And what's more frustrating is the team is more talented than a lot of Yankee teams that underperform. Like, if you look back at the post Jeter, Granderson, Teixeira times, right? This is like when A-Rod was suspended. Like, you never thought you would get a worse lineup than that. And the fact that the Yankees still, I believe, won 84 plus games in those two seasons, and they missed the playoffs, but they finished with a winning record. That so-called streak Brian Cashman is holding on to is in jeopardy this year. And I don't, even as a big Yankee hater, you have to be a little surprised of how disastrous this season has gone. I know Yankee fans, they like to say things like, oh, it's the same old stuff. And in a way it is, right? The team isn't hitting. The team still, is home run heavy, not enough lefties in the lineup, right? And it's kind of the same old thing with the Yankees, especially the past 3 years. As hot of a start as they got off to in 2022, the season prior was disappointing. The COVID year was the COVID year, but the season prior to 2022, 2021 was disappointing. And the second half of 2022 was disappointing. And this entire season has been disappointing. So whatever Brian Cashman and his analytic team and the front office in general, what they're cooking up in the offseason is just not working. And I was blown away. Well, I guess I shouldn't say I was blown away. They did absolutely nothing at the trade deadline. Absolutely nothing. They didn't buy, really. I mean, they kind of did, but not really. They just got another bullpen arm when at the time, that was probably the best part of the Yankees. It probably still is, although they lost today's game with a 3-1 lead. So I'm not really sure what was the thinking going into that, but they needed bats and they didn't get any. It seemed like they just assumed that Cody Bellinger was going to fall in their laps, and he didn't. So, because the Cubs started winning, and there you go. They didn't want to trade Cody Bellinger anymore. So they're really banking on that. And with the newly added playoff teams, right? Now there's more playoff teams in the MLB. It's not, the trade deadlines are going to be different, right? There's going to be a lot more teams who want to compete. And there's a lot of people arguing. I'm not sure I believed it at the time because the Yankees at the time of the trade deadline were only 3 games out, I think, maybe 2.5, but I'm pretty sure they're only 3 games out. And they did hold a playoff spot for a very long time, even after Judge got injured. So people were wondering if they should buy or sell. You were getting an amazing year from Garrett Cole. You still are, despite his performance versus the Red Sox, although I felt horrible for him in that moment. The guy just didn't have it that day, and the Yankees can't win even when Cole pitches well sometimes. I mean, that Marlins game was a joke that kind of started this losing streak in a way, this atrocious losing streak that ended yesterday, but they lost today. And they made it somewhat interesting at the end, but ultimately it didn't. Again, like they failed to get hits with runners in scoring position, and it's really hard and bland and difficult to watch. And I know there's a lot of Yankee fans that want this team to fail. Yankee fans have always been this way, right? when they get behind a team, they show up. And listen, people are still going to the games, obviously, but the energy around Yankee Stadium is a whole different story. I mean, just look at 2017, right? That wild card game versus the Twins. And Didi Gregorius hitting it out of the park, that grand slam to put the Yankees up 7-3. Just look at the energy in that stadium, because that is a team that these fans, these diehard fans, got behind. And then you look at last year versus the Houston Astros. This is the third time they've faced the Astros. I mean, I guess fourth if you're counting 2015 in the wild card, but the third time they've faced the Houston Astros in the postseason, and this time it wasn't even close. They didn't feel like it had a chance. Bader hit that home run in Game 1 to make it 1-0 off Verlander, and that was it. Just nada for the rest of the entire series. And even though Judge had a historic season, Yankee fans are like, oh, great, but are you going to win? Like, are we going to win at all in the postseason? I mean, for God's sakes, we get there every single year. Well, this year it's not going to happen, and it could be a wake-up call for Cashman, who Yankee fans want gone. Michael Kay said it on Scott Van Pelt show yesterday that there's a rally forming to a Fire Cashman Day. I believe Michael Kay said September 22nd. And guess what? Cashman's not leaving. So as much, I mean, if you saw the press conference Cashman gave yesterday, it sounded like, listen, I appreciated the accountability, but Cashman's been here for a long time, since 1998. 25 years. This guy's been here, and he was here longer before that. He just became the GM in 98. And he gets a lot of credit for those World Series runs in the 90s, in 2000, 2001, like these World Series appearances and in some of these championships that maybe he wasn't always fully a part of. I mean, I think Brian Cashman is a good GM. I think the issue with him at this point is just he's been there too long. And clearly the analytics team that he has just is, they're fooling themselves at this point. The Yankees cannot hit, and their offense is atrocious, and you never feel confident. You look at some of their individual players and you think, okay, but Stanton has had a miserable year. I mean, to the point where it seemed like Stanton kind of wrote off his Yankee haters, right? He was booed in his debut, right? But he always performed well in the playoffs, and people kind of gotten used to Stanton. But the injuries, when they come on pretty much every year, and the guys, they kind of need him. Like when Judge is finally injured, I guess, this season. I mean, he was not injured last year, right? Judge gets hurt again this year with the toe after making a miraculous catch at Dodger Stadium. They need Stanton to show up, and he didn't, right? Bader, who I loved and still do like a lot, is in a massive slump right now. Rizzo, that whole situation is just bizarre. I mean, how does that happen? It's just a ridiculous situation. I still have hope Anthony Rizzo, because they just signed him to a new contract. I still have hope that Anthony Rizzo can come back and be a really good baseball player. I mean, he just was another person for 2 months, but we just found out he was hurt the whole time. And you knew that while he was struggling, you knew that Tatis run-in, right, was going to be an issue. That was the root of this. Because it's like, oh, this didn't just suddenly happen out of nowhere. It was just like, Rizzo was hitting 300 with the band of the shift. Rizzo was killing it, and just all of a sudden he gets injured, and he comes back. He supposedly passes all the check marks and coming back, and he's absolutely dreadful. I mean, it's ridiculous. And I mean, and I think to sum up the Yankees the other day, I mean, they lose to the Nationals 2-1. I believe this was Monday night, I think it might have been Tuesday night. But the Yankees lose 2-1 to the Nationals. And Ben Rortvedt, the guy who I think was hitting .098 going into the game, has the only 2 hits for the Yankees until like the 8th inning, I think. I'm pretty sure that's what it was. And that's garbage. I mean, the Nationals aren't a good team. So you can't hit versus the Nationals. I don't know what to say. It's been a depressing season. And listen, Cashman deserves at least a little bit of credit for taking accountability. He said playoff contender, now championship contender before the season about how the Yankees were built to be playoff contenders. That pissed a lot of fans off because Yankee fans believe that every year should be a championship. You're the damn New York Yankees. We get it. And yeah, it bothered me a little bit, but I did appreciate the accountability with Cashman. And listen, with Cashman, I've been very fair. As if you've listened to my rants on the New York Yankees this year, I have been very fair towards Brian Cashman. I do not think he is a dreadful general manager when it comes to the New York Yankees. I just haven't believed that. I refuse to believe it. I refuse to believe if you have a winning season pretty much every single year that you've been the general manager. It's in jeopardy this year. I fail to see that you're a bad general manager. Are you overrated? Absolutely. I think Brian Cashman has to be at this point when you look at it. This Yankees team should not be as bad as they are. They shouldn't be. I mean, seriously, if you're looking at it on paper, they shouldn't be. However, they are. You are what your record is. Carlos Rodon was a guy a lot of people wanted. Was one of the best pitchers in baseball last year for the San Francisco Giants. He comes to the Yankees. Everybody loved that addition. Rodon's been pathetic this year, blowing kisses to fans who are criticizing. I mean, I remember the press conferences Rodon was given before at his Yankee opening press conference, and he was saying, "Oh, I could totally take on New York. I mean, the fans, everyone expects you to win here." Well, his like second or third game pitching, and he was in Colorado. He's blowing kisses to fans. Come on. I mean, you can't say you built for New York and then this stuff happens. He's pitched maybe like 2 good games this year for the Yankees. I can't even count. I should be. I haven't done the research, but I should be able to count the games Carlos Rodon has pitched this year because it's not many. I mean, this is a guy that pitched better than Garrett Cole last year. Now, it was a down year for Cole for his standards, but Cole's been lights out. And Garrett Cole, we got to give Garrett Cole a hand here because, listen, Garrett Cole has been through the ringer in New York so far. He signs this huge contract, and when you sign a contract like that, there's huge expectations. He comes to the Yankees, and you know they do the picture of him holding the poster when he was a kid at Yankee Stadium. We get it. Here's the thing. He pitched horribly in that wild card game versus Boston, and it ate away. Like, Yankee fans were like, I'm sick of Cole. Well, Garrett Cole, I mean, how could you not love the guy at this point? The guy pitches every 5th day. He doesn't get hurt. This is knock on wood. I got a wooden coffee table right in front of me. He doesn't get hurt, and he continues to pitch well through this crap. And really just Saturday versus the Red Sox, a team that always seems to knock him, unfortunately. I mean, how could you not feel bad for the guy? He was bewildered after getting tattooed out there. I mean, Garrett Cole has been a diamond in the rough, and so is Judge. I mean, there was a thing on WFAN recently where they called out Aaron Judge, possibly. I think it was Tierney and Sal Licata. And they said, should Judge be blamed? How could you blame Judge? How could you blame Judge? You know what Judge did? Last night, he basically single-handedly ended the New York Yankee losing streak. Single-handedly. It's his first 3 home run game. The guy's playing on 1 foot. He's like 40% healthy right now. He's not supposed to be playing. And in fact, he probably shouldn't play in September. He shouldn't. That's a captain. That's a Yankee captain. Now, I'm not this person, as you guys know, I'm a Yankee fan. But I'm very real when it comes to Judge. Judge had an amazing season last year, but I still said a few weeks back, listen, if Judge doesn't hit in the playoffs, this team isn't going anywhere. Okay? Now, this team's not even going to the playoffs. So that should say a lot to how poorly constructed the roster is, considering that they need Aaron Judge all the time. Aaron Judge is in his 30s. Now, I know he signed this huge contract, but you're only going to get so many of these like greatest baseball seasons of all time, Aaron Judge seasons. You're only going to get a few of them. So, and Garrett Cole. Garrett Cole's been in the league for some time now. It's only a matter of time where maybe his stuff doesn't look as good. I mean, I hope that's not the case. Stanton's already looking like he's dropping. I mean, it's a ridiculous situation that the Yankees find themselves in. DJ LeMahieu, who wants him at this point? He's been playing a little better as of late, but he got off to such a miserable start, and basically he has not had a great season really since 2019. The Yankees decided they were going to wait to possibly get a left fielder, and nothing happened. They thought they were getting Bellinger, it didn't happen. And let's talk quickly about the Yankee prospects. I'm not going to get on Volpe. Huge amount of expectations on him this year. I think Anthony Volpe is going to be a really good player. He's shown that he's had some pop at the plate. He struggled in the field early on, but he's shown he could be a quality shortstop. I like Volpe. Seriously. I think Volpe's going to be really good. The kid's super young. I mean, he's my age. Okay? So, but as far as the other Yankee prospects, I mean, Peraza's like Barry Bonds in AAA. He comes up here and he's fine, and he's not hitting. So I don't understand where I really don't know what's going to happen with the Yankees. Okay, this bullpen that seemed to be a huge weapon for them, it seems they're getting tired. And you know why they're getting tired? Because the starters are ridiculous. I went to the Yankee-Red Sox game Friday night. What a dud. I mean, Johnny Brito, 7 runs in 2 innings. Game was over. Similar to where Cole happened the next day. I mean, Rodon's giving you nothing. Severino, I mean, listen, we got to give props to Sevy, and this is what people think Yankee fans are evil, and say, sometimes we can get a little evil. Sometimes we can get spoiled, for sure. But Sevy pitches great yesterday. And what do Yankee fans do? They give him a standing ovation. If it's not that complicated, if you play well in New York, you're going to be a legend. You're going to get your due. If you play poorly and you're not accountable, you're not accountable, you're going to get booed. All right? It's what comes with it. So, as far as the Yankees go, that's all that needs to be said. I don't even really want to watch them, but I always watch them because I enjoy the pain and suffering, I guess. But this is the worst Yankee season in a long, long time. I mean, the last time they finished under 500 was 1992. But they almost went on a 10-game losing streak, and they haven't been on a 10-game losing streak since 1982. So this is a disgrace. And as much as I look at the Steinbrenner situation, Hal Steinbrenner, and he gets heavily criticized for not being his dad and, clearly doesn't like firing people. And I think you need a balance, right? Steve Cohen actually said something great in his Give It To You Straight interview. And we're going to transition to the Mets soon. Steve Cohen said, I don't want to be known as the hothead owner that fires everybody. I like to give people patience because I'm not going to attract anybody. No one's going to want to play for my ball play. No one's going to want to play or manage or work for my ball club if I'm a hothead owner. And I think there's something to that. Let's not forget, Steinbrenner was a hothead. George Steinbrenner, the great George Steinbrenner, was a hothead in the 80s. It was only through his drive to win in the 90s that probably made that Yankee team a dynasty. But they had to build that the right way. Building prospects like Jeter, Pettit, Posada, Mariano Rivera. That's what the Yankees got to do. The whole thing should be developing younger players at this point. You got to do what you can to get good prospects in, and you have to develop them. That's been the main issue with Cashman over the last pretty much decade. We thought we had, other than Aaron Judge, all right? I mean, Greg Bird didn't pan out. Gary Sanchez didn't pan out. I mean, look at Glaber. Glaber looked awesome to start. You got him in the trade for Chapman. Right? You got him from the Cubs. Glaber's probably been the most consistent Yankee in regards to health and hitting and defense. But let's face it, Glaber's, there are many times where you're like, man, can I get more out of you? You could be so much better. I mean, that's a consistent thing. He made an error in the game I went to last week. Crucial error. Today, he played very well, right? He hit. Right? He hit the 2-run homer. Right? Got a nice base hit. I mean, listen, Glaber, I forgot if he had the base hit or walked, honestly, but Stanton had the big base hit. But it's just a situation with the Yankees where you got to develop your farm system, got to develop younger talent more, because this buying players stuff, yes, it's great. I mean, Stanton was coming off an MVP year when the Yankees traded for him. The fact that people are looking back at that deal saying it was a mistake, I mean, come on. What are we doing? Stanton's been good. This is a year where he's severely declined, and he can't hit a fastball. Now, today he was very good. He had 4 hits today. He had the home run. He played very well today. He has moments where you're like, all right, Stanton's good. But the guy's never healthy, and he's built like a Greek god. Anyway, I'm just so sick and tired of it with the Yankees right now. I mean, you're running into a brick wall at this point. And I think it's a disgrace if Aaron Boone gets canned and Cashman's still there. I really do. You're going to look at this season, you're going to be like, Aaron Boone's the problem? And maybe sometimes a manager change is needed. But how could you look at Boone's job this year and be like, oh, just it's all on him? How could you? This is Cashman's doing. Now, as much as I think he's going to be back next year, if another disappointing season happens, I mean, he did sign a 4-year contract. I understand that. I think he's going to get 1 more year. But if this is like the same energy next year, and it could be a situation where it needs to get worse before it gets better, the fact that the Yankees are under 500, I think should say a lot of things. I mean, how could it get much worse than this from a Yankee fan's perspective? They're not used to this. And these are the expectations that the organization, Brian Cashman, has set up for Yankee fans. But this is on Cashman. He's got to fix this mess, and he's aware of it, and he's probably going to he's going to look at things all over the place. But this is it, I think, for him. Like, in the next year or 2, I think he's going to be back. If the Yankees' situation does not get better, I mean, you got to move on from him at that point. I mean, at that point, you're reaching the upper half of 20-plus years. I mean, it's ridiculous. It's job security that's insane. I wish I honestly had it with any job that I ever obtain in my future. But that's enough about the Yankees. It's despicable. I just quickly want to talk about the Mets because the Mets actually have been making some news lately. Some for the right, some for the wrong reasons. They've been playing much better baseball. Unfortunately, it's too late. You're getting good play. You're getting great runs here by Lindor and Pete. It's too late, though. And you're getting articles. Ken Rosenthal released, I believe it was Ken Rosenthal, wrote a story for The Athletic. Even though we're weeks from the trade deadline at this point, Pete Alonso was in the center of trade talks to the Milwaukee Brewers. I don't really understand that. Now, I'm not a Met fan, but I know a lot of Met fans in my life, and I don't think a single one of them wants Pete gone. I mean, talk about a guy who's embraced a pretty mediocre product. When you look at the Let's Fucking Go Mets and stuff like that, he's a homegrown Met, and the guy's in a somewhat down year with the injury he had in that slump. He's probably going to hit 50 homers again. So I don't get it. Actually think it would be a mistake. The guy's 28 years old. He's not that old. I mean, this is a guy Mets fans love. And if you just got rid of... I mean, listen, the Mets organization has done this forever, right? They get rid of players the fans love, but you hope with new ownership that changes. I mean, they're honoring... Steve Cohen just announced they're honoring Darryl Strawberry and Doc Gooden. And I think it's important that you also have the fans behind you, considering how disappointing this year was. And I think the Mets made the right decision to sell at the deadline, unlike the Yankees. I think the Mets have a future that makes sense. I think Steve Cohen made a tough, but ultimately the right decision. I don't understand how you can really criticize him as the owner. He spent, and he made the right decision that this team wasn't going anywhere. Listen, the 5-year plan never works. I can't remember a time where I don't know what I'm saying. The 5-year plan, when owners come in and they say 5 years, I mean, I speak from experience with Mikhail Prokhorov with the New Jersey Nets. We're going to win a championship in 5 years. Whatever. It's ridiculous. Let me see it. Okay? And then they overspend. It's the classic new owner syndrome that's been told many times. I mean, part of it, you've seen it with Matt Ishbia for the Phoenix Suns in the NBA. But in baseball, Steve Cohen, I think, made a really good decision to cut bait with these guys. I mean, Verlander was pitching really well. I know Mets fans were probably sad to see him go, but I think they made the right moves at the deadline, getting younger and trying out. I mean, the Mets got this new energy to their season, and they're closer to the wild card than the Yankees, who are trying to win. I mean, just think about that. The Mets punted on the season. That's where you got to think about it. If you're a catcher, like, wow, the other team in New York punted on the season, and they're closer to the playoffs than we are, and we're trying to win. It's disgraceful, but enough about the Yankees. As far as the Pete Alonso trade, I mean, listen, I think it's pretty well documented that Steve Cohen's going after David Stearns, the Milwaukee Brewers. The guy responsible for building the Milwaukee Brewers roster. I think it's no secret that he's trying to bring him in and bring in a new president of baseball operations. So I think there might be a little bit something to this. I still don't understand why they would trade him, though. Especially since he's kind of maintained a pretty good attitude throughout this whole thing. I mean, there's been reports that the Mets locker room was pretty brutal around the trade deadline, but I just don't know how much Pete's really a part of that. I mean, the guy played hurt and came back probably a little too early, but that just shows his passion. The guy plays every day. I don't understand why you'd want to get rid of a guy like that. I really don't, unless you think you can get some really good value back for the guy and you don't plan on winning the next year. But I would just pay the dude. I mean, just pay Pete. I mean, Mets fans, as much as Francisco Lindor, has the love of some Mets fans, I don't think he has the love of all Mets fans. The guy's getting paid $300 million, and let's face it, since they brought him in, they've had pretty disappointing seasons in 2 out of the 3 years he's been here. And as good as Lindor has been recently, that's just the case. He's always going to be the guy who's worth $300 million, and he's hitting in the low 220s. Right? Last year was a great year for Lindor, but they didn't win. So Pete's a homegrown guy. I mean, I just think if you're looking at it, I understand you can't be too emotional with these decisions, but it just doesn't make sense to me, especially because Pete is a really good player. So as far as the Mets go, that's pretty much all I have to say. And honestly, unless something crazy happens, I don't really want to talk about baseball anymore. I probably will, but I don't really want to talk about it anymore. This is the worst baseball year in some time, considering the expectations. I mean, Mets-Yankees fans were having, I mean, maybe Yankee fans not as much. I mean, but Yankee fans still were like, okay, we're going to be in the playoffs. Like, let's get to the World Series. Let's see. I mean, and even early on, Houston looked like they were struggling. Like, the Yankees took 2 out of 3 from Texas that one weekend. I mean, they played pretty well against the Rays, but I mean, you just saw the Yankees versus the Braves. It was just a disgrace. I mean, even and the Mets too. I mean, Scherzer just completely disappointing, and you had to move off guys like Tommy Pham, and just a disgraceful season. I mean, if you look back, like in 2014, 2013, both teams weren't in the playoffs. But there was still something like you knew the teams weren't going to be that good. You knew they weren't going to be that great. This year, I mean, World Series expectations here. Big spending in the offseason. And both teams are most likely going to finish under 500. It's a disgrace. It's a disgrace. But that's enough of New York baseball. I've spent 30 minutes talking about it. Jeez, I had to really air that out. Let's move on to New York football, because that's the real juice in this town. I was excited about baseball, but football season is coming up. It's really going on right now with the preseason. This is the most anticipated football season in a long time. Long time. Last year was pretty surprising. We all knew that the Jets and Giants got better last year. With they did really well in the draft. The Jets drafting Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner, and the Giants, while they were bringing back pretty much the same, not as loaded of a roster or anything. They brought in a new coach in Dable, who had really good success in Buffalo as an offensive coordinator. Really kind of turned Josh Allen's career around. And so it was a surprise. The Giants made the playoffs. And listen, the Jets didn't make the playoffs, but it was seen as like some sort of a productive season. It's just Zach Wilson was just so god-awful. And honestly, there were questions about Saleh, too. And the Yankees were not the Yankees. The Yankees are too much in my head. The Jets were 7-4, finished the year 7-10, 6-game losing streak. Breece Hall's injury kind of turns a huge point in the Jets season. Well, the Jets have Aaron Rodgers. I mean, probably the most legendary quarterback the most talented quarterback to play in New York. I mean, I think we could say that. Considering the greatness of Aaron Rodgers, he is older, of course, classic New York fashion. You're getting an amazing all-time great player at the end of his prime. He's not even in his prime anymore. However, make no mistake about it, he's Aaron Rodgers. He's Aaron bleeping Rodgers, right? As a lot of New York Jets fans in my life have said. He's Aaron bleeping Rodgers. And Hard Knocks, I've been following up with it. I've not seen, I think episode 3 came out the other day. I haven't seen that, but I have seen the first 2 episodes. And it's very clear what the issues are with the New York Jets. Very clear. And that's the offensive line, which I think most people knew was going to be something. We'll see how horrible, if they're that bad, we're going to find out right away, because their opening 6-game schedule is pretty freaking brutal. The great Joe Beningo says game 1 of the Jets-Bills, Jets-Bills, game 1 is a must-win for the Jets. I don't know if I go that far, but let's just say if the Jets lose that opening game, Jets fans aren't going to be feeling that great the next day. It's the first game of the season. We love to overreact, especially with football, because there's not a game every day like in baseball. There's not a game every other day like in basketball or hockey. It's every week. Every week has its own storyline. You can go 6-0 to start an NFL season, and if you lose in week 7 or week 8, then it becomes, well, are they really that good? That's just what media members do with football. So, when it comes to the Jets, they're loaded. They're freaking loaded. I mean, there's a reason why Rodgers wanted to go there in the first place. He has his weapons, right? I mean, they just got Dalvin Cook. Corey Davis just retired. It's worth noting that. I mean, I don't think he really had much of a spot with the franchise. going forward as he probably thought of, and that's probably why it happened. But it's Aaron Rodgers is going to solve a lot of issues. However, if there's anybody that can solve bad offensive line issues, it's Aaron Rodgers. Okay, Aaron Rodgers had a bad Packers team last year, and the team almost made the playoffs. Now, that last game when the Lions really didn't have anything to play for and the Packers had everything to play for, I mean, it's not great that Rodgers lost that game, and the season prior, I mean, MVP year, losing to the 49ers and Jimmy Garoppolo, that wasn't great either. So Rodgers has had his fair share of bad playoff losses. I mean, if you're just being honest here, I wouldn't go as far to say he's not clutch or anything stupid like that, but just he has had a fair share of bad playoff losses. Now, it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen early on with the Jets, because I think this offensive line could reveal a lot of issues, but I'm really looking at Robert Saleh. People were critical of Robert Saleh in the first 2 episodes of Hard Knocks, and the fact that it doesn't seem like it's his team. It's more like Aaron Rodgers' team. You know what? Whatever. I think just a lot of players are like that. Like when a lot of coaches are like that nowadays, where if there's a superstar quarterback, it's their team. I mean, like, it'd be the same thing with Tom Brady. Like, I obviously know Brady had Belichick forever, but like when he went to Tampa, it was just kind of similar, I feel. So Aaron Rodgers with the Jets is no question going to make the Jets, like, minimum. I don't see the Jets unless Rodgers gets hurt, I don't see the Jets having a worse than an 8-win season. I just don't see it. The roster is too talented. However, that's not the expectation, right? The expectation for the Jets is Super Bowl, and that division is pretty good. I mean, some people have the Patriots being better than what they are, than what they were last season. You got new coaches in there. Last year was kind of a disgrace of a year with coaching under Bill Belichick and his coordinators. But in regards to the Dolphins, the Dolphins played really well against the Bills in the playoffs, showed some signs. I mean, you could see a Dolphins season. I don't trust that Tua is going to stay healthy, and his backup is Mike White. Jets fans love Mike White, but let's face it, he's Mike White. I mean, these are things you got to take into account. So, as much as I want to believe that I'm not a Jets fan. I'm a Giants fan. I'm going to be very real with you, but I try to be very fair. I have no distaste towards the Jets. I really don't. Not a Jet fan, but I have no distaste towards them. I'm happy for Jets fans that they're able to finally have a team that they can be really proud of. And they're immediately getting a lot of love. I mean, you haven't really had this much excitement for the Jets since the Rex Ryan days. I mean, there was that one year where they almost made the playoffs with Todd Bowles and Ryan Fitzpatrick at the helm doing stuff. I mean, I just think with the Jets, you need to keep in mind that I just don't trust Robert Saleh. I really don't. I think the way things fell apart with Zach Wilson, the quarterback, and the immaturity that the team kind of showed and how they just did not like Zach Wilson, I mean, a lot of that falls on the coach, the morale of the team. We get it. Zach Wilson's that bad, but it's a disgrace that he's a young second-year quarterback. And who knows, maybe he's not playing well because he doesn't have the right coaching. That could be it. Listen, I don't think Zach Wilson's very good. He showed some moments in preseason, but what are we talking about? It's preseason. What are we talking about here? Do I think it's a good thing that Aaron Rodgers is going to be starting above him and he can learn from Rodgers? Absolutely. It's probably the best thing for Zach Wilson to do that. What, is he going to go to some bad team and just, kind of just put on the cleats and then just throw interceptions and overthrow receivers, make horrible decisions? I mean, obviously there's no substitute for playing, but I think with Zach Wilson, he got his first 2 years to play, and it didn't go well. So you got Rodgers in there, maybe he can learn a thing or two. But I think Saleh, another big criticism with Saleh was his clock management last year. I mean, he even came out and said it recently, where he called out his clock management last year too. So I think for the Jets, it's major excitement, But they did make a lot of noise in the offseason. And it's important to know that the offseason is just the offseason. I mean, most Jets fans, not most, I mean, I don't know. But a lot of Jets fans are also Nets fans. And they're also Met fans. They know a thing or two about exciting, somewhat past their prime, but still playing at a high level, stars signing with their teams, and then bailing a year later, or not going as good as they thought they'd be. And I hope that doesn't happen for a Jets fan's sake. I really do. I hope the Jets are having a really good season. And I think it's possible, for sure. As I said, I don't think they'll lose anything more than anything less than 8 games. I think that's the basement for them, honestly, unless Rodgers gets hurt. However, that's not what Jets fans want. Jets fans want an 11-12 win season this year. They want a division title. They want a Super Bowl appearance. An AFC championship appearance. An AFC championship win. That's what they want. And considering how much suffering they've endured, especially in the last decade, listen, you gotta say this thing too, is that Rodgers has embraced being a Jet, unlike Brett Favre did in 2008. He has embraced being a Jet, and I think he knows that if he wins here, he's gonna be a legend. Maybe more of a legend than he was in Green Bay. Considering the Jets haven't won since freaking Super Bowl III. So, I mean, my dad wasn't even born yet. That's the last time the Jets. My dad's 54 years old. That's the last time the Jets have won. My dad was born in May in 1969, for those of you who don't know. So, it's important to acknowledge that. Now, to transition to the Giants, the other team with expectations in this town, not as high. But it seems like lately, I mean, you're getting some Giants fans really pumping out their chest. I am not one of those people. I don't like doing that. Because you know what? The last Giants team that I had expectations for was the year after the whole boat party thing, when Rodgers killed the Giants in the wildcard game. I think it was a wildcard game. I could be wrong, versus the Packers. Where Aaron Rodgers absolutely embarrassed them. And that Giants team was really good that year. And then the next year, they were a complete flop. Complete flop. So, it's new management. New front office, new head coach, a head coach I love and I trust. I think Daniel Jones obviously had a really good season this year. I think Daniel Jones is our quarterback for the future. I think Giants fans gulped at the $40 million a year thing, but let's face it, that's the quarterback market today. Daniel Jones does a lot more than his numbers say. I think he showed that in the playoffs he could be a really good quarterback. I know that Vikings team was kind of like just a big fraud, but still, I mean, it's a playoff. It's a playoff win. And considering the few targets that he had, it's impressive. It's impressive. There's no doubt about it. Now, the Giants need to not, and this is what scares me too, is just they exceeded expectations last year, significantly. No one had the Giants making the playoffs last year. Nobody. I don't care. Even the most optimistic Giants fans didn't. So I am terrified of this year possibly flopping. And they added guys. I'm excited for Darren Waller. But Darren Waller played 9 games last year. Okay? His injuries scare me. And let's face it, speaking of injuries, Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones have injury history. They were healthy last season. So that terrifies me to the core. So, as excited as I am to be a Giants fan this year, and as excited as I am for week 1 to start, I'm still terrified. Because it's a much harder schedule this year. The Giants' opening of the schedule last year was pretty easy. And even then, they had some games where, If they went the other way, it would probably impact the rest of the season. I mean, just look at that Ravens game last year. Look at the Packers. The Packers weren't good. And the way they came back last year versus the Packers. Right? The missed field goal by the Titans in the first game. I mean, those were the type of wins the Giants were getting early on. And listen, you need luck to win football games. For sure. You need luck to win in a ton of games. I'm not here to derail the Giants season. I'm just saying if you're a big Giant hater, that's the stuff you look at. Maybe things just went really well last year. And maybe this year, luck doesn't fall as much on your side. And that scares me. But I do think the Giants are better on paper. For sure. Daniel Jones has more targets. I mean, it's gonna be really interesting to see. But there's no question that both New York football teams have to make the playoffs in order to, I mean, for the Jets even more so. But I think the Giant fan, listen, for me, I would like to get to the playoffs 2 years in a row. Can we do that? When was the last time that happened? It doesn't happen often for the Giants. It just doesn't. So make the playoffs 2 years in a row, and maybe we can get excited about possibly doing more. I mean, there's Sal Licata on WFAN thinks that the Giants are Super Bowl contenders. I wouldn't go that far. Is the NFC not as good as the AFC? For sure. I mean, you got to take that into account. But let me just see the Giants get to the playoffs a second time, and then maybe I can really do things here. I mean, I don't know if a lot of Giants fans are really thinking that, but I think that needs to be said. My expectation is that they will. But you see a lot of people out there saying, well, the Giants, yeah, they're better on paper. They may be a better team this year, but their record may be worse. And the division's tough. The division's tough. I mean, a lot of people have faith in the Cowboys. Let's face it, the Cowboys, it's kind of usually the same story with them, right? The Eagles were in the Super Bowl last year. I mean, this is stuff to take into account. You got to consider these things. So, I'm excited for the Giants season. I'm excited for Jets fans. I'm excited. I think it's going to be awesome to watch good quality football in this town. It's going to be buzzing. I mean, you're not even going to hear about the Knicks or some New Yorkers will say you don't hear about the Nets anyway. But the Knicks specifically and Nets, basketball, hockey in this town, right? New York, New Jersey. You're not even going to hear about it if the Jets and the Giants are good. I mean, let's face it. If the Yankees and the Mets were in the playoffs this year, you probably hear about it for sure. But like the Jets and the Giants right now have the attention of this market. And they cannot disappoint like the baseball teams did. They just can't. So that's New York football. And those are my thoughts just to start the season. I want to talk about it more as the season goes along, game recaps, etc. But I got to touch base on little basketball news. First of all, Lillard hasn't been traded yet. It's not surprising. I've talked about Lillard too much on this, and he gave an interview recently saying that there was a trade request. And you know, here's a quick thing about Lillard, and I said this at the beginning: Miami doesn't have enough, and it's really that simple. And I think Portland's doing the right thing. I really do. And not only that, but I think Miami was kind of banking their whole summer on getting Dame, because this team, losing Gabe Vincent, Max Strus, is much worse than last year's team. And last year's team was an 8th seed. If you believe the Heat got lucky last year, now I don't believe the Heat necessarily got lucky. I think they made their own luck. They outplayed guys. But considering that Jimmy Butler he's not really durable during the season, you don't know what you're going to get from Tyler Hero now after being in trade rumors basically all summer and then making the finals without him. You don't know how he's going to show up. Kyle Lowry's older. This team is old. This team is small. And if they really struggle this year, you know, maybe Caleb Martin was a lightning in a bottle thing. If they really struggle this year, the Heat, I wonder if Lillard would still want to go there. I seriously don't know. But that's just all I need to say about Lillard. He's not getting traded anytime soon, clearly, because that Miami Heat offer, like I said months ago, it stinks. But I got to talk about James Harden. because Harden made news. Harden made news for calling Daryl Morey a liar, his best buddy. James Harden, I try to be as fair as I can. I did call him a loser. I still believe that. I mean, how could you not after all the actions of the past 3 seasons? He's requested out of 3 frickin' teams in the last 3 years. Now, Houston, I didn't really love how he did it, but I mean, listen, he showed up fat and out of shape. It's not the first time a player's done that, but he played, right? And that Houston Rockets team was clearly they needed a rebuild, and he saw it. He did. That's one thing. He gets to Brooklyn. They got a great thing going, and then Kyrie doesn't get vaccinated. You guys all know my feelings on that. Kyrie screwed that whole thing up. There's no doubt about it. I mean, if Kyrie stays, Harden probably does too. So, even some people. Now, I hated the way he did it. I could argue that if he just stayed another month, it would have been fine, because Kyrie was cleared to play games after that. I still think that big 3 was dominant, and it was worth giving it a try for the rest of the season. If he left in the offseason, I would have understood it more. But he just gave up at the trade deadline. And he gets to Philly. He's finally in a good situation. He plays with the MVP and Joel Embiid, and he wants out. What's the priority for James Harden now at this point? What is it? Is it money? Clearly it's money. But he could have signed that a $250 million, maybe even more than that. It might have been $260 or $270 million extension with the Nets, and he declined. He could have signed that contract and asked out later. He probably would have gotten it. Houston offered him $50 million a year for the next 2 years. He declined. It was never about money for him, but I guess now it is. They fired the coach, Doc Rivers. It was clear Harden didn't gel with Doc Rivers instantly. Doc Rivers came out and said it. He was coaching James Harden. It was very frustrating. The guy doesn't want to move without the ball. And here's the thing. Harden in his prime, right, could get away with that stuff. Now I'm not so sure. You got to give credit where credit is due. Harden had a really good season for Philly last year. Way better than I thought it was, especially way better than I thought he was going to be, because the year prior he was awful to watch. I mean, awful. But even a hamstring-issued Harden, even before things kind of started to go, like before Katie's injury in 2021, 2022, the Nets were winning with one hamstring Harden or Harden quitting or whatever that was. Harden gets you regular season wins. He does. And he gets you in a position to succeed. The problem is when you get to the playoffs and you really need him, sometimes he just doesn't show up, especially in elimination games. The people who praise Harden, they look at his stats in the regular season. I just acknowledged to you that Harden is a great regular season player. They look at they nitpick and they look at, not nitpick, they cherry pick for certain games that James Harden has performed well in the postseason. They look back at his game winner in 2015 when the Rockets were down 3-0 and they were an 8th seed versus Golden State, and they look at his game winner. Big freaking deal. All right, what about Game 6 versus San Antonio in 2017? Okay? I gave him credit for playing on the hurt hamstring. He didn't have to do that versus in the Milwaukee series. He probably played as good as he probably possibly could have. But I give him crap for crappy effort versus Miami in Game 6 of 2022. I give him crap for this year, Game 6, Game 7. Because, yes, he played really well in Game 1 with no Joel Embiid. It's a huge deal they won that game. Absolutely. He deserves enormous credit for that. Plays great in Game 4, too. What, 2 games? Yay! Played well in Game 1 versus the Nets series. Couldn't miss a shot in the first half. Scored like 2 points after that, but okay. We're cherry picking here with Harden. He's left two situations where there was tons of talent. Or sorry, he's left one officially, but you best believe he will be out of Philly sooner rather than later. But actually, I don't even know if that's accurate because I don't know what's going to happen. We've never seen this before. Most general managers, when it comes to James Harden, they don't even want to deal with it. Sean Marks didn't want to deal with it. They traded him at the deadline. They thought Simmons was going to come in. Didn't happen. To make an impact, they were like, oh, that looks better. We'll do that. Harden wants out. Fine. Harden hasn't even been that good this year anyway. And then Harden has a really good season for Philly last year. Houston, at some point, were like, okay, let's get rid of this guy. Well, I think Daryl Morey's like, I'm challenging you to come to Philadelphia and do what you've done in the past because that fan base is going to kill James Harden. And he has to show up at some point or else they can prevent him from becoming a free agent next year. So he does have to come at some point. Pause. He does have to come to training camp. Oh, maybe he doesn't have to go to training camp, but he does have to play in games this season. Daryl Morey's like, yeah, play. You come here and quit on your teammates. And I respect Morey for doing that. I really do. And what he lied about? Harden wants Philly to just take crap for him from the Clippers? What, you want to go to the Clippers? I mean, I think the Philly situation is a much better one. You still got Maxey, you still got Harris, you got Embiid, the MVP. Joel Embiid plays more games than anybody on the Clippers. And this lingers to what's going to happen with Embiid. I mean, you saw the troll Embiid, right? His Twitter where he takes off Philadelphia in his location. And this all affects Embiid because you best believe those New York teams and others, they're going to be in the hunt for Embiid if he asks out. Maybe he's sick and tired of guys leaving him, like Jimmy Butler and Ben Simmons and Harden and fumbling the bag for that second star. I mean, they didn't draft Bridges. They traded away Bridges after they drafted him. Fultz didn't work out. Probably could have had Tatum. Like, this is the stuff. Like, maybe Philadelphia has made so many mistakes at this point. And, you know, to be fair to Morey, he didn't make those decisions. He's drafted very well. He's drafted Tyrese Maxey. Tyrese Maxey's really good. I think he's a little overrated. I think people talk about him like he's this next big, great guard, and I don't see it. I think he's more of a Lou Williams, Jamal Crawford type guy, spark plug. Now, I'm not trying to limit him, but I just think that's what he is. So it's going to be very interesting what happens. But listen, Harden, 3 times in 3 years, wanting out of a team. I mean, that's crazy. I can't remember the last time that's happened, and it's only going to hurt him. You think any team is going to pay James Harden after his antics the last 3 years? He may think so. Maybe he'll go to China and play everything. You know, get paid everything. And I don't know. I just think that Harden's decision-making has been super bizarre. And quite frankly, I just think it's been idiotic. I think some of the decisions... To me, Harden's best place to win was, obviously you may think I'm biased, but it was Brooklyn, because in Brooklyn with Irving and Durant, he could be the distributor, right? He did a great job doing that, and he didn't really need to score in game 6s and game 7s. Durant was there to do that. Irving was there to do that. And there were still other guys around that team. There was still Joe Harris, guys who could space the floor. Like, to me, that was the perfect spot for Harden to be successful. And it was such a perfect spot that even like hamstring Harden, like, or as who I like to call that player who played for the Nets, that corpse in the last few months, even that Harden was still a good fit for that. But I think it goes to show you the leadership, and he talks about how he's this leader and that he wants to win and blah, blah, blah. Your actions, like Brian Windhorst says, actions speak louder than words, man. Like Andrew Garfield said in Tick, Tick, Boom. Referencing Tick, Tick, Boom. Actions speak louder than words. And James Harden has not done that. James Harden's actions show he's not a winner. He doesn't want to win. So that's all I have to say about Harden in this recent episode because you heard, oh, Morey, he's Morey's his guy, whatever. Clearly not. Not anymore. They weren't that close. Harden has proven that even though he has a friend, that doesn't mean he's going to play with them. I mean, look, Westbrook. There were sprinkles of this in Houston, right? Like he wanted Dwight Howard, and then he was sick of Howard. He's like, get rid of him. Chris Paul wanted, and then sick of Chris Paul after 2 years, get rid of him. Westbrook, 1 year, all right, this isn't working, blah. I want to go play with the Nets' big three, KD, Kyrie, and okay, that didn't work out. No, there was just a lot of stuff under the radar. Stuff was going on. I didn't want to be a part of that anymore, that situation. I'm going to go to Philly. This is where I've always wanted to be. It's my guy Daryl Morey, my guy Joel Embiid, and now he wants out of there. It's all ridiculous. And honestly, it's embarrassing. So I'm sick of talking to James Harden this summer. It was all a big tease. I didn't think he was going to get traded to the Clippers because I know Daryl Morey isn't going to just give him up for peanuts. Harden should be embarrassed. And this goes to show like Harden and Lillard to an extent, because as much as Lillard's kind of been a good trooper, I mean, him trying to force himself to Miami and putting Portland in no better situation to get anything back for him, it's crap. This is where I don't like Adam Silver, great that he fined James Harden $100,000. I can't stand when players do this stuff. When they have I'm all for player empowerment, and people think when you're against some aspects of player empowerment, you're pro-owner or pro-governor or whatever. Like, no. I'm pro the fans. Pro the fans. That's what it should be. And James Harden does not care about the fans. Kyrie Irving does not care about the fans, clearly. KD doesn't care about the fans. Lillard, to an extent, doesn't really care about the Portland fans. Because I think it's important to be happy in a situation, but you got to be flexible too. You're under contract. This isn't a free agency decision. If Lillard was a free agent and wanted to go to Miami, totally different story. Do your thing. He chose to sign to grab the money from Portland and request out because he knew he could. And that's a disgrace under Adam Silver, seriously. And that's when you hear some people crap on the NBA for stuff like this, like there becomes a point where you don't care about the fans. The tickets are ridiculously expensive. The stars don't always play every day. There's way too many games, 82 games. They're trying to include this midseason tournament, which I think sounds like a disaster. We'll see how that works out. But I think it's like Harden and Lillard can't just be like, I'm going to the Clippers and that's it, and I'm gonna be moody the whole time. I mean, come on, man. But they may get their way. And if they get their way, that sucks. I think that's just bad for the NBA, personally. I think it's great for the NBA if Lillard, Jimmy Butler, and Bam are on the same team together. I do. And if Lillard was a free agent, that would be different. He's not. He grabbed the money. He's no different from any other player in NBA history that or the past few years. As much as he wanted you to make you believe that he was different, being loyal to Portland and all that stuff. Listen, I'm sure some of that was true. I'm not saying none of it was, but I mean, he clearly didn't think all the way through, and he's clearly like, all right, I paid homage to you guys I stayed longer than I should have probably, so just trade me to Miami for nothing. Come on, you can't do that. And James Harden, trade me to the Clippers for nothing? It's not going to work out, but I honestly don't know what's going to happen with either of them. I mean, I assume Lillard ends up in Miami, but honestly, I don't know. It's definitely not going to happen anytime soon. So that's enough of NBA talk. It's going to be less NBA talk going forward, obviously, because we got football season. Baseball season was a disaster, as we've already talked about, so not as much there. So we'll see what happens. But that's the sports talk today. Next segment is going to be movie catch-up. All right, movie catch-up. So it's worth mentioning I still haven't seen the new Mission Impossible. I also haven't seen most of the movies that have come out in August. I haven't seen Blue Beetle, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and some others too. I'm gonna try and take care of everything here. I have 13 movies. Let's see if some I'm gonna go into depth more than others, and some I don't have too much to say, but it's important to possibly know my opinion. If you care. But first, my most anticipated movie of the entire year, and I think many others, was Oppenheimer. I saw it twice, and what I can confidently say, keep in mind, I've seen most of the films that have come out this year. I haven't seen all. Oppenheimer is the best movie I have seen in 2023. And how rare is it that your number one most anticipated is also the best movie you have seen that year? For me, it's pretty rare. Okay? Oppenheimer blew me away. It's something that I need to warn viewers that if you don't like talking movies, it's not for you. It's not for you. And I'm not trying to sound pretentious in that way. Like, if you don't like movies where people talk, especially movies where you really need to pay attention to every single scene, and Oppenheimer, and keep in mind we're going to be going light spoilers into a lot of this stuff, but specifically with Oppenheimer, I mean, people know the ending to Oppenheimer, I would say. But just considering that it's historical fact, a lot of it. So, but despite it being historical fact, the ending chilled me, and I'm not going to spoil it for people because I really think if you haven't seen it yet, even though this movie's making a ton of money, which I'm so happy to see. On a side note, $100 million I think the budget was for, and it's a 3-hour historical biopic. And some parts of it are in black and white, and there's not a lot of action. And the fact that it's making this amount of money shows how good this is, and I'm really happy that Christopher Nolan's using his platform to make films like this, because a lot of big budget movies you're seeing, we're in a really weird time in Hollywood, right? The weird time in Hollywood is every movie's so expensive. There was a report recently that came out that Fast X, which I haven't seen, has barely made a profit, and those are movies that bank in the theaters. Like Fast and Furious always makes money, and the movie was so damn expensive that it didn't. Indiana Jones, I talked about that in the last podcast. $300 million. It's crazy. These movies are way too expensive, and there's other more expensive movies that I'm going to get into later. But back to Oppenheimer. Cillian Murphy is so damn good in this movie, like ridiculously good, and I want to see him as a lead in more stuff because he doesn't really always get to play the lead, especially in a Nolan movie. He's usually like a side kind of dude, and he's good. It's just to see him as Robert Oppenheimer. He's so unbelievably great. Everybody in this cast is so great, and there's Oscar winners that are barely in this movie. Like, Casey Affleck is an Oscar winner, and obviously his career he's not getting as much work due to the accusations against him 5 years ago. I don't know how true those are, but I can say that Casey Affleck is a fantastic actor, and he's so good even 4 minutes. And there's so many people like that are just in this movie, like Rami Malek, another Oscar winner, barely in it, barely talks, but when he does, he makes an impact. Like, it's unbelievable how bloated this cast is, but how good everybody is in it. So it's worth saying that. And I just couldn't believe a 3-hour movie was as compelling as this was. It's essentially 3 different movies, as Christopher Nolan was quoted saying it was. The first act is kind of his origin, the middle act is building the bomb, and then the last act is like a court case drama. So it's really exceptionally done. It was a idea that I knew of but didn't. It was a real life historical event that I knew of, obviously, but not as much as I know now that is portrayed in the movie. I didn't think about it that much. And I think it's really important for audiences to go and see a movie like this, like especially my generation or younger, to see a movie that takes place in the 30s and 40s and 50s, and you're going to see um, pretty incredible things that happened in American history. And I was blown away. And I saw it a second time because I wanted to, because there are things, if you're not paying attention to every single scene, you do miss things. And I followed the story much better. And the second time I watched it, I was just, I didn't read as much before it came out, so I didn't know how he was going to tell the story. It's a very Nolan way of telling the story, kind of like Memento in some ways, of how he tells it with the black and white and the present. Like, it's very similar. You could tell you're watching a Nolan movie, but the dialogue and the music, some people have complained about the music. I really enjoyed it. I thought the music added to it, and I must say, when the atomic bomb goes off in this movie, you don't hear it at first. You hear a delayed explosion. It is so rare that you're in the theater. There's only 2 times, I think, in my lifetime that I've been in the theater where it's quiet and you can literally hear a pin drop in the theater. You can literally hear it. And then that was in Star Wars The Last Jedi, the scene where Laura Dern's character makes the sacrifice and goes into hyperspace, into the ship. That was quiet, and I couldn't hear anything. And Oppenheimer, when the bomb goes off, not a sound. Brilliant. And the anticipation leading up to the bomb, you know what's going to happen. It's not even like the actual bombing of Hiroshima. Like it's literally a test, and you're juiced up for it. And just an incredible film, and I couldn't have been happier. There was not one thing about it that I wish was better. Like, seriously, like there were some people say they walked out of the movie and thought it was boring. I'm not gonna say you're wrong. I'm just gonna say this movie's not for you. Okay, I'm not gonna say you're an idiot if you thought this movie was boring. You clearly, this isn't a movie for you. Like, what were you expecting? Like, this guy wasn't a soldier. This guy built the atomic bomb. This guy he's a scientist. There's going to be a lot of science talk. Not really sure what you were thinking. It's a fascinating tale. I highly recommend it. And I'm trying to get my dad to see it, honestly. It's still in theaters. I saw it in 70 millimeter and I saw it in IMAX. There's a 70 millimeter IMAX theater in Manhattan. I live in Jersey. So maybe I don't know if they're still showcasing it there, but I would love to go there. But it's hard. It's always been hard to get a ticket. It's still hard to get a ticket for Oppenheimer. It's that good. So I highly recommend Oppenheimer. Now, the movie it opened with, Barbie, is the highest grossing movie of the year. It's going to be the highest grossing movie of the year. I can't imagine anything else beating it for the rest of the year. It beat Avatar, The Way of Water, I believe. Not only has Barbie become the highest grossing movie of the year, but Barbie's also kind of been pretty controversial. And it's not shocking after seeing the movie. It really isn't. People have kind of attacked people who've criticized this movie. And listen, some people take things too far. But let's just say the demographic that Barbie is made for isn't for me. And that's all I'm really going to say with this film. I've never laughed at a movie so much to a movie that I just didn't really care for. It's really that simple. I don't look at that movie. I don't look at Barbie as garbage or anything. Like, it's poorly done by people. Like, it's clearly well made. It's clearly got funny jokes. It's clearly got some important themes in it. Ultimately, they were really trying to put the nail in the coffin with they were very on the nose with several aspects of the movie. I just think I think there were important themes in there, for sure, that I think would have been very interesting to explore, maybe even more. Um, but I just went into that film expecting something different, got something that was probably a little bit more political than I wanted. But I mean, it's Barbie. I'm not gonna like buy Barbie. Like, like I just, it's not for me. This is for a huge amount of the population, but not for me. And that's really just my thoughts on Barbie. I would never tell anybody to not go see it or anything. I don't think they would even listen. But I would not tell anybody to not go see it or anything. I've talked to people who enjoy it. I've stated my reasons why I don't enjoy it particularly, and then it's just not for me. But it is very funny. But some of the themes that they're really trying to, get you to understand, it's to me, wasn't it? It didn't have to be in this film. I just didn't see the point in going that far into it. If you want to explore that topic, fine. But the fact that they really went into it, if you've seen the movie, I think you've assumed what I'm talking about. It didn't work for me personally. But that doesn't mean it's a bad movie or other people can't enjoy it. That's just my personal thoughts. And honestly, that's all I really want to talk about Barbie. There are people who are reviewing this movie that don't like it and are getting trashed for it. And I think that's ridiculous. It's just a movie, people. Next, so that's Barbie and Oppenheimer, but the rest are a bunch of movies that I've seen this year, and I just want to briefly touch on. And that's recently, not recently actually. Oh yeah, I saw Spider-Man, Across the Spider-Verse. This was also one of my most anticipated for the year, and I must say the animation is one of the best I have ever seen. I have literally never seen anything like it. Like, each character has different styles. Like, Gwen has different styles. Like, if anybody remembers Eric Carle, the classic animated illustrator and author from your kids, made like the I think it was like the Caterpillar book. Like, it has that sort of like wet watercolor paint style to it. That's like Gwen's world, and it's just great. I honestly thought it was gorgeous as soon as I saw it. I was really nervous for this because the first one was so good. And when I heard the reported amount of characters in this movie, I was thinking it could have been bloated, but no, it's handled perfectly. My brother actually saw it and said it was one of the best theater experiences of his life. And, I could see that for people. Absolutely. It's that good. Gwen is given a lot of time here, and she is one of my favorite animated characters. Gwen is freaking awesome. So, kind of backtracking off the Barbie thing, or another thing too with the controversy with Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs remake, Rachel Zegler making a ton of, ridiculous interviews. There have been really good female characters in cinema and animation. And Gwen Stacy, specifically this Gwen Stacy in Spider-Man Across the Spider-Verse, is one of my favorite female characters of all time. She's amazing. And she's voiced wonderfully by Haley Steinfeld. She's the perfect amount of strong, but also feels things. She gets emotional. She has flaws. And that's what makes her so freaking interesting. And that's what Hollywood, specifically Disney, is messing up in their movies today. You saw it in Dial of Destiny with Phoebe Waller-Bridges' character. Hey, got her name right. Didn't get it. Get her name right last time. Just the flawless female characters are not interesting. And that's not because female characters aren't interesting. It's because flawless characters in general are not interesting, male or female. That's just the way it goes with writing. The most compelling characters of all time are interesting because they're flawed. And Gwen Stacy is a wonderful character and one of my favorite animated characters of all time. I know there are people who have issues with the ending, but it leads to a lot of promise. I mean, say I did not. For some people who probably didn't anticipate what was going to happen with the ending, it worked for me. I really enjoyed it. I think it was kind of like a similar feeling to Infinity War, Empire Strikes Back. People like to be satisfied at the end at first, and there's more to tell in this story. And I think that was the right ending. This is just as good, if not better, than the original film, in my personal opinion. I think it's actually better. The original film is really good. I think it caught a little bit too much praise. Like, it was excellent, and it was a giant surprise, no doubt. And I loved rewatching it and everything. But like, I actually think that it's, it's really good. But like, people were considering it as the best Spider-Man movie ever made, and I just don't see that. I just personally. This movie's also very funny, and there is fan service, a lot of fan service, but there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, unless it's not cheap. I mean, sometimes the Star Wars stuff gets a little cheap, and some Marvel stuff gets little cheap, but Marvel has handled fan service well, for mostly. And I don't know. Some people saw The Flash as cheap fan service. I didn't. Actually, I did a little bit, but not like thought it was garbage. So, yeah, that's Spider-Man Far From Home. I thought it was excellent. One of my favorite movies of the year. Moving on to Creed 3. Now, Creed 3 came out a while ago. So, Creed 3, but I thought this was just something because I recently rewatched all the Creeds. Creed 3 was an honorable mention for me for my anticipated, and it paid off. I mean, listen, say what you want about what's going on in the news with him right now. Jonathan Majors, controversy aside, he is one of the best villains in the Rocky Creed franchise. I freaking loved him in this movie. I thought he was great. In Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania, I honestly, as time goes on, I thought he was pretty bland, and he's supposed to be like the next Thanos, pretty much, in the MCU, supposedly. We'll see what happens with his future, honestly, because of what's going on in his personal life. Assuming all that is true, we don't know what's going to happen. He's fine in Ant-Man. Like, he's basically Darth Vader. That's basically what he is. But Creed 3, I mean, great performance. Just great. He's awesome, and he's above the Ant-Man stuff, if you ask me. The relationship between the two it just had me entertained the entire time. They have a personal connection with one another from the early days when they were growing up, and now it's a lot of it is rooted to what's happening in the present. And Adonis Creed is retired, so it's interesting to see this version without Rocky, because Rocky, Sylvester Stallone, due to situations that suck and unfortunately is why we can't have happy things sometimes, Rocky's not in it, and that's unfortunate, and that's what's missing from Creed 3. I think Creed 3 is on the level of Creed 2. I really like Creed 2. Some people don't like Creed 2. I think Creed 2 is great. And like I said in my last podcast talking about Transformers Rise of the Beast, which we later found out is the lowest grossing Transformers movie ever made, which is, saying something, I guess, but not saying too much, I guess, because Transformers movies make a lot of money. But it says a lot, because I don't think it was that bad, no doubt. Stephen Caple Jr. is a capable director. I think he's a really good one, and he made Creed 2, and that was excellent. But Creed 3 was missing Rocky a little bit. But they do a good enough job telling the story without Rocky. Creed 3, honestly, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. Probably will be one of my honorable mentions for top 10 of the year, I think, just like it was for my most anticipated. Next film, Evil Dead Rise. This was a movie that was getting a lot of buzz when it was released. I was excited for it. I'm a huge fan of Sam Raimi's Evil Dead films. I have not seen the remake that came out in 2010, but I'm a huge fan of the trilogy, Raimi's trilogy. And I love Bruce Campbell and them. I just love everything. I haven't seen the show either, the Ash versus Evil Dead TV show. But I was looking at this Evil Dead Rise film, and Evil Dead is something that's always kind of been in my nightmares. This whole thing of you can't kill these things, these undead stuff. Like these things just keep coming. There's tons of gore and tons of blood, and I was excited for Evil Dead Rise. And when I was in the theater, I was sitting down. And unfortunately, it for me, the whole charm of the original Evil Dead franchise is that in a way, they took themselves. The films didn't take themselves that seriously. And Evil Dead Rise kind of did. And there's just not enough comedy, for sure. There's just not. It takes itself really seriously. It's very bloody, so it's very gory. And it has really fun body horror. Like, there's crazy things that happen with bodies here. There are elements to this film that are extremely impressive. I think from a suspense level, from a horror filmmaker level. You could tell this, I'm forgetting the filmmaker's name. This director is very good at horror. I mean, some people aren't. I mean, David Gordon Green, he's directed the Halloween films recently. He's a guy that has done several different genres. To me, he's not really the best with horror. But the director is Lee Cronin. Lee Cronin is pretty great with horror, honestly. I thought he was excellent in how he handled this film for sure. But some of the characters are extremely irritating, and the aunt, I swear, makes really dumb decisions. I mean, there's a moment, the movie's been out for some time now, where she's just in a room, all this crazy shit is going on, and she's just in a room alone, not watching the kids. I don't get it. I don't know why she wasn't watching them. If this stuff was happening to me, I wouldn't want to leave anybody alone. I'd bring the kids with me, and I'd be figuring stuff out by themselves. So the decisions like that. But there's no one that I hate more than the character of Danny. This kid, forget his little bleached hair that bothers the crap out of me. He is just looking for trouble, this kid. And I just couldn't stand any time. I really wanted him to die. And luckily, spoilers, he does. When characters make alarmingly dumb decisions, there's a moment where the daughter clearly sees a fucked up face version of her mother and opens the door for her when she says, let me in, let me in. Like that. Who's doing that? I don't care. Listen, there's times when my mom didn't look like that, and she's like, let me in, and I wouldn't let her in. Why would the little daughter? I get what they were trying to do. I just don't believe it. It's not like she looks normal. Like, she's clearly fucked up looking. So when characters make alarmingly dumb decisions in horror movies, it just bothers me. Also, a lot of the reactions to the horrific stuff going on is surprisingly underwhelming. Like, all this crazy crap is going on. Crazy shit is going on in this film. And the faces are just kind of like, what's happening? Like the face is like, oh, that happened. Oh, okay. Oh, I'm supposed to be scared? Like, it just was that could have been just a direction mistake. I have no idea. But Alyssa Sutherland as the mother is freaking phenomenal. She's so good, and honestly, the reason to watch this film for sure. But like I said, there's a sore lack of comedy. I didn't laugh once. And that was the goal, I'm pretty sure. And you don't want to make it too similar to the original Evil Dead franchise. Like, don't get me wrong, I understand that. But because there was a certain charm to those, but I don't know, just a little bit lacking. So I do think the Lee Cronin has an elite eye for horror, and I think he's got a bright future in making horror films. It's just this Evil Dead movie didn't reach me like I was anticipating it to. A lot of people really enjoyed this film, and when I came into it, I was expecting high, and I kind of just got a mediocre film for my taste. Even though there's a lot of cool stuff that really happens. Entertaining for sure. I was never bored during it. No doubt about it. It's just some bad character decisions and some brutal characters. And I couldn't really get behind anybody, honestly. The person I liked the most was the mother. And she's really cool in it. So I think that's a thing to watch it. But I think you had to get behind somebody here. And I just couldn't get behind the sister. Not that much. Next film, another movie that made a ton of money this year was Super Mario Brothers. Super Mario Brothers was more enjoyable than I expected. It didn't do well critically, but audiences adored it. I played a decent amount of the games, but I'm not like this Super Mario homer. Um, there was a lot of criticism for Chris Pratt's voice, and they even kind of address it in the movie that like he can do the Mario, that you could do that whole thing, but then like we just need him to talk normally. So I actually like that. I didn't need to hear like, oh, Luigi, like the whole movie. I just didn't need to hear that all the time. So it would have been annoying. So the criticism for it was dumb. It's funny. It looks great. Kids would love it. It has excellent voice work from pretty much everybody. Jack Black, Pratt, Anna Taylor Joy, who I'm a big fan of. But one thing that bothered me in the movie is that Peach is perfect. In the games, I get it. Peach is kind of like this damsel in distress, but I mean, she's literally flawless in the film. Like she teaches Mario, the signature character, how to do like everything, and even at the end, like she significantly helps Mario and Luigi, and it's almost like she almost saves the day. She gets a major helping hand in it. And I'm not saying she can't help or anything, but my God, it's pretty like she does no wrong in this film. And she's snarky, and it's just she's very sassy. It just feels too much like a Peach movie sometimes, rather than the Mario movie, which everyone is there to see. So it was fun to see them include all the games, but I would have liked to have seen more Luigi. There's not enough Luigi. Charlie Day, who I'm not the biggest fan of, is pretty good as Luigi, and I would have liked to have seen him more. But there's no question, it's enjoyable for kids, and it's pretty crowd pleasing for everyone. So I think it's a fun movie, but I would never watch it again, honestly. And there was things that bugged me, like honestly, like there is a lot of Peach, and like you just sometimes think like, okay, can we get back to Mario and what Mario's doing? I don't know, just my opinion. Next film, Air. It's been a while since I've seen Air, but I must say I was anticipating this. It's just a story that I like. It's a story. It's Michael Jordan and how he got his Nike shoe deal. I didn't think they would ever make a movie on that, but clearly I learned a lot because it's a thing that in sports history that's underrated, doesn't get enough attention. Air is excellent, and I'm so happy to see Affleck and Damon working together more. I mean, those guys as a duo are just freaking phenomenal. The dialogue is extremely sharp, which is very important because, again, this is a talking movie. There's no sports going on in this. Like, it's a sports movie, but there's no sports going on. So you need the dialogue to be sharp, and it's very funny. I actually liked that they didn't show MJ's face. I was worried they were going to do that because Michael Jordan is such an iconic figure. To have just his face played by another actor would have just been bothersome. I would have hated it, honestly. Similar to like in Doctor Sleep. If you haven't seen Doctor Sleep, spoilers for that. When they recasted Jack Nicholson's character for what's his name? The E.T. kid, and I'm just blanking on his name. I believe it's Henry something. Henry. Why can't I remember his name? Henry Thomas. Yeah, Henry Thomas plays Jack in the Doctor Sleep film, and it was distracting to me. It just was. Just show the back of his head or something if you're not gonna do Nicholson or whatever. One of my rare flaws in a Mike Flanagan film, my favorite horror movie director. But I liked that they didn't show Michael Jordan's face. It has a great it has a great theme of perseverance, to get something done no matter what people say, and very motivating for anyone who wants to succeed in something. There's no doubt about it. There's a lot of nuggets for NBA fans, like when they talk about players from the NBA draft in '84. There's moments where, they're like, oh, I like this player, and oh, that player stinks, and they're talking about John Stockton, Hall of Famer, obviously. Like, I loved that stuff. And that he went to Gonzaga. Like, no one goes to Gonzaga, and all that stuff. not many issues here, honestly. It's as good as it can be, considering the source material isn't really like eventful. If you don't like talking movies, this isn't for you. Similar to what I said about Oppenheimer. But some of the greatest films of all time are talking movies. So I recommend being open to that idea. Like, you got to be open to talking movies. That's my main suggestion. Great dialogue and fun to root for the characters. My only issue, like seriously, my only issue is I don't think the story, like the only reason why I wouldn't put this over something like The Town or I like Argo a lot. I just don't find the story as that interesting. Like the topic itself isn't as interesting as some of those other films. It's the only reason. But they did the best job they possibly could on telling this story. So Air, excellent film, one of the best of the year so far for sure. Here's a very controversial one. Beau is Afraid. Now I saw this with someone and they absolutely hated it. And there's a ton of people who absolutely hated this too. I loved Beau is Afraid so much. It was one of my most anticipated. I loved most of the movie for sure. Like, it's 3 hours long. I get it. But man, this film is something. Like, you'll never see another movie like this. Joaquin Phoenix carries it. And I loved him in this film. Ari Aster, has made some stuff that's kind of, some people think it's like artsy fartsy stuff, but like, I don't know. I really took this film as a movie about anxiety and really bad, crippling anxiety, and I related to it. And the ending was chilling for me. It very was. I thoroughly enjoyed it. It's bonkers. The humor, it worked for me. It's very funny. And I left the ending like stunned and cold, honestly. Phoenix sells it. It is too long. But I also wasn't ever really bored. I mean, some people get really bored, but once the movie, there's a moment in the movie where there's a lot of visions, and that seems to be the part of the movie where most people have checked out for. But I think the reasons for the length are like I took it as this, putting the character who clearly has bad anxiety in these absurd situations and how he would react in a situation like that. That's how I took it. I think a lot of people they don't really want to see an ambiguous film. Some do and some don't. And I think this is a movie that makes you think, and you have to rewatch it sometimes. It's 3 hours. No one wants to rewatch a 3-hour movie. People want to get it on the first try. And sometimes you don't. And that's cool. But there's an inkling for me to watch Beau is Afraid again. I want to rewatch it. And since I enjoyed it so much the first time, I think I'm going to enjoy it even more because I'm going to get more stuff. So Beau is Afraid actually is one of my favorite movies of the year. Top 5 probably that I've seen this year. I loved it. And I just think it was just excellent. But let's bring a little negativity here. The worst film that I've seen this year is, this is in theaters. I haven't seen, every film, but The Little Mermaid remake. This film was easily one of the most hated films before anyone watched it that I've lived through. I hate that. And if anybody follows my blog, Couch Talk with JB, I wrote a giant piece on The Little Mermaid and the Disney live action remakes. And I'm a huge fan of the Little Mermaid film. I love it. It's top tier Disney. It still holds up. It's like 80 minutes and it packs so much. I don't like the Disney live action remakes, so this film may not be for me, but my question is, will you ever watch this over the originals? Would you ever? It is clearly a pull for nostalgia. Halle Bailey is a beautiful singer, but I just am not sure if the casting choices in this film were done because, if they might have been stunt casting. That's what it comes off. And listen, I'm not just saying it in my opinion. I'm just following up from what many people have said. I mean, Double Toasted has mentioned that. They mentioned that recently with the Snow White casting choice and all that. I mean, it's good that we have diversity, but here's my thing I want to ask Disney. If you really cared, right? If you weren't just doing this for a trend, right? Or that it's the right thing to do, or public public love or whatever. Like, just, if you really cared, why wouldn't you take that money and make something original with a diverse character? Kind of like what they did with Encanto or Coco. Like, movies like that. Like, why not make those? Notice no one's complaining about Encanto. No one's complaining about Encanto. I liked Encanto. Tons of people did. No one's complaining about that film. That's a diverse princess. If you count, it's cool. I say some people don't see her as a princess. It's been a while since I've seen the film, but I believe she's a princess. Encanto was a diverse character in an original film. That's what's going. Like, I'm curious to see what this new film Wish is going to be about in the next few months, because I haven't heard that. Looks like an original tale to me. But recasting Ariel as a different race, like, is just going to piss people off. And considering that what really matters is the movie good? And it's not. It's not good. It adds an entire hour to the original story for no reason. The original story is 80 minutes long. This movie's like 2 hours and 20 minutes. They added a whole other hour, and they cut stuff from the original film. There's so many people in this movie, and I said it in my blog. I said it in my blog post. Why are there so many people in this movie? Oh, I know why. It's because Disney wants to include every single ethnicity in the background just to appeal each and every demographic. And by the way, is there anything wrong with that? No, there's nothing wrong with that. Of course not. Here's the problem. They're more focused on that than making a good film, which is what the main goal should be. The main goal should be to make a good movie. That's what it should be about. And that's what's so frustrating, because there's several awesome, diverse lead characters that we love. Several. I'm not sure what this does. And considering that Halle Bailey is a great singer, no doubt about it. Halle Bailey's a great singer. Actress? To be honest, in defense of her, I don't really think anybody's that good in this movie. I think Javier Bardem is pretty bad, and I love Javier Bardem. Melissa McCarthy on paper is a perfect casting for Ursula, but she's, again, bland. And Daveed Diggs is one of the most underrated actors out there, I think. Have you ever seen films like Blind Spotting? I think he's super talented. He comes off in this movie, he voices Sebastian. It's such a fake Jamaican accent. And don't even get me started on the Scuttlebutt, the new song written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who's a super talented songwriter. And Awkwafina, who I also think is talented and funny sometimes. In this movie, she's massively annoying. And this movie, when they sing the Scuttlebutt, they literally have Sebastian and his crab arms doing a cliched hip-hop dance to the song, like, what we gonna do before the sun go down? Like, that's what he's literally doing that. And I couldn't help but die laugh in the theater. It's that bad. And I think this movie, when you drive home, or when after you see it, you think, okay, fine, not as good as the original, whatever, and then you drive home and there's little things that bother you. Like, why is Les Poissons not in this film? The song Les Poissons, why is it not in there? it perfectly captures Sebastian's fear of the human world, and you totally understand his perspective and all that. And why is Ariel singing Under the Sea? The whole point is that she's frustrated with being under the sea. And Sebastian's trying to get her back into thinking that way. And she's all smiling, and she's smiling and singing it too. And it's like, and then as soon as the song ends, she's gone. So I guess, what was that? What was that about? And then, I have so many issues with this movie. I listen, the race stuff with the diversity is great, is great and all, but it gets to the point where it's confusing. It's almost like a stage play. In a stage play, it doesn't matter, but in a movie where people really care about this stuff, and Eric's mom is, I believe, is biological. Is she biological? I don't know. Is Eric adopted? Because Eric's mother is black and Eric is white, like dead pale white, like not like. Like, is he adopted? And his father is also a different race. I'm just forgetting. And then Ariel's sisters are all a different ethnicity. And I don't know, her dad, Javier Bardem, did he have several wives? And doesn't that defeat the purpose of Ariel's mom? I just don't get it. And, little stuff like that shouldn't even matter, right? But for some reason, I'm thinking about it, and since the movie's dull and boring and looks gross, honestly, like it's a dark, gross color, and that's not just The Little Mermaid, it's most of these Disney live-action remakes. The Snow White movie also looks like everything's clean, but just slick looking. It's just a dull film, and I don't get it. And unfortunately, I didn't have high expectations for it, but I saw it was getting some pretty good critic reviews. And I wonder if those, I would just like to ask what those critics were thinking that gave it positive reviews. Halle Bailey's an excellent singer. There's moments where she's really phenomenal, like with the singing. The part of your world thing, when she goes on top of the rock, it looks like they sped it up, and it doesn't look natural. So it just $200+ million. I think it was 220, maybe even more. This movie bombed, and for good reason. It was, and another key important thing this has been talked about is Eric saving Eric not being really involved in the ending, and they want to choose it as Halle Bailey's character. Ariel is, she can fight for herself. She doesn't need Eric. And listen, you really think that's why that was in the original Little Mermaid film? No, that's not why. It's in there because Ariel saves him the first time. That's number one. And number two, it shows that humans can be good too. And that convinces King Trident to accept the true love between Ariel and Eric. That's why it's in there. It's not just guys saving the... And the fact that Disney thinks that proves to me that Disney doesn't even know their own stuff. They don't even know it or understand it. And I can't believe I'm getting this emotional over The Little Mermaid, but that's just the truth. And it's just a movie that, if you're wondering why studios and actors and writers, they're all on strike, right? Or the studios are upset, is because it's movies like The Little Mermaid not doing well. It's them throwing expensive-ass budgets at these films that are poorly written and just mismanaged by studios. Studios see the wrong things. And that sucks. And that's why it bombed. And, Snow White, is already getting blasted. It's not even near release yet. So I just have a whole issue with the live-action remakes in general, because I didn't even get to the part where the fact that they look real doesn't matter. The whole point is that they were animated. You could see facial expressions. You don't see that. Flounder looks stupid. It's just a fish talking. Sebastian, it's just a crab talking. I mean, this is where we are, people. It's not interesting. It's not cool. You get no emotion from the story. And this movie's so long. I couldn't believe it. I didn't even look up the runtime because I just assumed it would be short. It's not. Who the hell would watch this? All right, listen, if you liked this more than the original, all to you. Like, there's nothing wrong with liking this movie. I'm just telling you what I believe. I didn't like it, and I know a decent amount of people are upset with it. But I guess that's just what Disney's going to keep doing until it makes no money. The thing is, they're starting to run out of money. So, is what it is with that stuff. So the next film I want to talk about is Guardians of the Galaxy 3. Probably the last good Marvel movie we've gotten. And it needed to happen. Listen, Marvel really needs a comeback movie. They really do. But I think most people liked Guardians 3. Here's the thing with Guardians 3. James Gunn is not going to be involved in the MCU anymore, and these are characters that we've loved for a long time. So it's got a lot of that going for it. It's a relief to see a memorable, good Marvel movie, though. Like, I'm remembering things from Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3. My quick thoughts on the previous Guardians films, I think the first one's really good. I actually think it's... People think the first Guardians is like one of the greatest comic movies of all time. I don't see that. I think it's really fun and entertaining, and it was very unique for the time. It was just this gang of misfits, and James Gunn was perfect for that. He did a great job with the Suicide Squad that came out 2 years ago. I really enjoyed that film as well. His comedy with these misfits work perfectly, and that's why I really enjoy the first Guardians. I have to rewatch it again, but I've seen it a few times since it came out, and my feelings haven't really changed. It's really good. People probably overrate it though, in my opinion. Guardians 2, I actually think some people underrate. Because some people really hate this movie, and some people see it as kind of like the turn to like, oh, they went too far with the comedy. Yes, sometimes they do, but this movie is also really funny, and that's, it's probably the worst one out of the three though. Guardians 3, I don't know if it's as good as the first one, but it provides a satisfying ending to these characters, or some of them, to this group of the Guardians of the Galaxy. My cons for it are the villain is meh to me. I just don't. He there's a point in the movie where he just screams. The first half is also pretty messy and bland. I remember some people really hyping up this movie, saying like, "Oh, Marvel's back with Guardians 3," and then I was watching the first 45 minutes, and I honestly thought it was pretty messy. We're jumping around a lot, and the thing that I cared about most was the Rocket Raccoon backstory, which without a doubt is the best that character has been, and he's been iconic for 2 movies and multiple movies. I love Rocket Raccoon, but he's so damn good here, and his whole moment with the backstory with the animals, it's honestly heartbreaking. It really is. Thankfully, the second half greatly improves, and it has one of my favorite action sequences in the MCU. It's done in one take, supposedly. I mean, they probably... Not everything in the shot is real, but it is in a one-take sequence, technically. And it's a satisfying conclusion to our lovable misfits, and I really enjoyed Guardians 3. It was on my most anticipated. I was scared that it wasn't going to be good, even though I had no reason to think it wouldn't be, because I enjoyed the first 2 Guardians. It's really just that Marvel was on a... They were just dragging it with a lot of these movies, to be honest with you. So the next film is about my father. A movie that isn't very good. It's Sebastian Maniscalco's new comedy. It's a family movie. It's one of those old school comedies that I miss and that aren't released anymore. But I did go see this and I enjoyed myself. But I can't say this movie's very good. Um, Robert De Niro, who does a lot of crap now, does a lot of movies like this, honestly. But I must say, he is really good as Maniscalco's father. Here's the thing. I am a huge fan of Sebastian Maniscalco, but even I, to a certain extent, get a little tired of his shtick. I think sometimes he kind of just talks about similar things, and it's his family, it's his father, it's his wife, it's how his wife and him are so different. And I'm really happy that he kind of went from this unknown dude to now he's making a movie, and Robert De Niro's his dad. He's also been in a bunch of stuff. He was in The Irishman. Like, I'm really happy for the guy, and I really like to see people that I've been following Sebastian Maniscalco for a long time, since he was before even really that famous. And he's just one of my favorite comedians. I think he's really funny, but a lot of his humor works well for the stage, but doesn't work well for a movie, because a lot of his humor is very physical. So there's moments where he's doing his physical shtick, and like I heard crickets in my audience, like no one was really laughing. But there's times where it is funny, and it's mainly the De Niro and Maniscalco being so different from these parents. Nice to see Kim Cattrall in a movie again too. I like Kim Cattrall for reasons. I mean, she is like 40 years older than me, but still, always liked Kim Cattrall. If you're a fan of him, you're going to get a lot of the humor. If you're not a fan of him, you're probably not. Or if you never heard of him before, I can see people honestly hating it. But it reminds me of that Meet the Parents type thing. It's just not as good, like not nearly. But De Niro is excellent, and there are some good laughs, but there are just some very cringeworthy like moments. That's really it. About my father. It's a silly comedy came out. Next film, You Hurt My Feelings. This was of a much smaller film starring Julia Louis-Dreyfus. And Julia Louis-Dreyfus I love from Seinfeld, obviously, but when she does a movie recently, I'm not really like sold. Like I don't see it. Like I hated You People. Like hated it. I thought she was terrible. Not she, but like that movie, like Eddie Murphy's the best part probably, and honestly, like his character is very unlikable. So like You People's was not great. That's the Jonah Hill movie that came out this year. But You Hurt My Feelings was a interesting tale, actually. And it's not perfect or anything, but I didn't really know what to expect. But it's basically like movies we don't really see anymore. They're just small-scale movies about family issues. This movie surprised me, because Julia Louis-Dreyfus movies aren't necessarily on the top of my list lately, despite her many talents. So, as I said before, I admired them tackling a subject that many couples can relate to. Basically lying to your spouse in certain moments just to make them feel good in the moment. And sometimes it's necessary and sometimes it's not. But David Cross is in a small role. My man David Cross, he's in a small role, and he's so funny. Like he's not in the movie that much. I honestly wish he was in it more, but the context of his character, he can't be. He's so freaking hilarious in this movie, and so is his wife that he played. I don't know. I'm not really sure who the actress is, but so great. It's very short. It's well paced, and it's very funny. I think the biggest issue I have with it, is the ending. I don't think lands as well as they wanted to. I think they were trying to be a little ambiguous with things, like you make of certain stuff, like this. We cut to a year later, and we're supposed to process all this information and then see what happens, and what happens at the end. We're supposed to kind of put it together, but I think I understood what the filmmakers were trying to say, that sometimes you just got to support your spouse and sometimes you got to be honest with them. I think that's what it was about. But some people may have issues because there's moments where it's contradicting kind of some of the main messages. But I think they were done on purpose. So they may see it as contradictory, but like, oh, what? That just happened? But I think that was the point. So that was You Hurt My Feelings, which honestly I would totally watch again. I thought it was very enjoyable, lighthearted comedy, and not many people saw it. And I don't know if anyone really heard about it. And if you do get a chance, I think it's a cool, fun little cozy movie you could just sit down and watch. Very enjoyable for me. But the last film I am going to talk about was my favorite movie of the year until Oppenheimer came out, and that is John Wick 4. I rewatched all three John Wicks going into John Wick 4, and John Wick 4 and John Wick 1 are on the same level. I loved John Wick 4. And, there's people out there, there's always people out there that are going to poo-poo what you like, right? Oh, you like action movies with no thinking. I like dramas. Like, oh, you like fancy smancy stuff. Oh, you just like comedies. Like, oh, you just like. How about like I like everything. That's my thing. I like every genre. I go from musicals to dramas to romantic comedies to freaking everything. Action, hardcore, badass action like John Wick 4. John Wick 4 is freaking awesome. And here are my quick thoughts on the previous John Wick films. John Wick 1, like I said, phenomenal. Great. John Wick 2, slightly worse, but very enjoyable. John Wick 3, probably my least favorite in the franchise, but still very enjoyable. John Wick 4 is incredible. And they're mostly pros here. But, I think it's a bit of a slower start than the others. Like, that was a moment where I was kind of like, okay, when we're going to get to some stuff? And then it gets going, and then it doesn't stop. With John Wick 4, and there is also, like, some silly, like, there's moments where, like, there's some stunts and some times where he hits the ground really fucking hard, and it's things where it's like, should he have survived that and all that stuff. Like, that's definitely in there. So I think if you count that as a flaw, that's a flaw. That was also in John Wick 3 and honestly in John Wick 2 a little bit. So it has incredible action. Do I really need to say anything else about Keanu Reeves and how great he is in these movies with the action? I mean, he doesn't talk that much, which is perfect for him, because sometimes if he does talk too much, it's a little like, oh yeah, he's not the best actor. But who doesn't love Keanu Reeves? If you don't like Keanu Reeves, I don't know what's wrong with you. Like something is wrong with you, man. Like, how could you not like the guy? Incredible stunt work. It's very well written too. I'm following the story. Like, sometimes you get into the whole underground stuff, and sometimes it can go just like, okay, they're bad guys and John Wick's got to kill them all. That's basically what these movies are about, as I get an ESPN alert. But that's what these movies are about. John Wick killing as many motherfuckers as possible, and that's really what it's about. Bill Skarsgård, though, is easily the best villain in the franchise, which this movie kind of needed, because the last three films didn't really have, like, probably the first film had the best villains, but I don't know, they weren't that great. It was more just like the context of why they were good villains. Like they killed John Wick's dog. It's more about what the dog represents, and him and his dead wife and all that stuff, right? John Wick 2 and 3, similar. John Wick 2 kind of tried to make a nice villain. Not really. Didn't work out that much. Never felt a threat to John Wick. Bill Skarsgård is a phenomenal actor. He was great in Barbarian. He's great in everything. He's great as Pennywise. Like, dude's such a great actor, and he can totally sell that unsettling acting. I love the ending. And I hope that's what it is. I hope that's the ending. I hope it just sticks with that. I really do. I don't need any more John Wick movies after the ending. I just don't. Spoilers for this, but John Wick, the ending to John Wick is an ending that is perfect for me, and I don't need to see any more. I really don't. And it kind of ends in a way where you don't know what to think about it. Could there be more? Could there not? I believe the ending is nice, and I don't need to see any more, because I don't think the filmmakers were planning on making more. But since John Wick 4 made a ton of money this year, now they're like, oh, now we got to make more. It's just, and I'm sure Keanu Reeves is down for that paycheck, but still, like, how many more really good John Wick movies are you going to make? Maybe you can make more. I just hope it doesn't turn into like the Fast and the Furious film where that you're making 10 John Wick movies. You don't need that. John Wick 4 ended really good. It's just really good stuff. But really the only issues with this film is some of the stuff Wick survives is a little too hard to believe, and that it's just a little bit of a slow start. But and maybe some of the underground stuff and these people explaining it like, okay, whatever, can we just get to John Wick killing people? But when John Wick is involved in killing people, it is incredible. And it's long. It's a 3-hour movie. And it says a lot how good a movie is that for 3 hours it could still bring you in and invest you. And I love John Wick 4. Definitely one of my second favorite movie of the year so far this year. I don't want to spoil my end of the year top 10 list, but it's Oppenheimer and John Wick 4 now for sure. That's going to do it. I said everything that I could possibly say and have wanted to say for a while, and I really apologize for taking so long on some of these. I really want to get to a point where this podcast is weekly, and I'm trying my best to do that. And I want to do some more stuff too. Just a little announcement. I do write. I do have a blog called Couch Talk with JB that is a weekly blog. I post weekly blogs, longer feature ones on the weekends. And I also do some sports writing work on Fansided. To Sir Charles in Charge, you can find my work there on NBA opinions and all that stuff and short 300-word stories. So if you are interested in that, check it out. I have many more plans for the future on creating some content, and once I can do that, you guys will be the first to know. I really appreciate you guys listening to the JB podcast today. We covered everything, and I was really happy. I feel very relieved that a lot of this stuff is on my chest. I've basically talked about every movie I've seen this year. So that was great. And pretty much, I obviously saw some films in the early parts of the year, like Plane, which I loved too, but I don't know, that's just too many movies. I talked about pretty much every movie I've seen for the last few months. You guys are great. Thank you so much for listening to the JB podcast. Have a good day, everybody.